This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Goal Boys Network. Here's your host, Will Hill.
Welcome to the Shoulda Bet More podcast, presented by Gold Boys. Coming up on the show, Iain MacMillan of Sports Illustrated will join us. We'll talk some NFL picks for this week, get his thoughts on these divisions, futures, and just his general thoughts here on the NFL season. He is a sharp handicapper, so excited to talk to Iain. And he's a Falcons fan too, so maybe we'll check in on him, see how his confidence is in terms of the Falcons. And it's interesting. I talked about this on the Monday show, and I was recording the Monday show in the middle of Sunday Night Football, which ended up being a great game. Bengals and Chargers haven't had a chance to react to that, and hadn't had a chance to react to Monday night Cowboys Texans, which there's not much to talk about there. Cowboys are a dead team. But at the time of doing the Monday show, a lot of the markets weren't open. Odds to make the playoffs, odds to win the division, all that stuff was down, as it usually is on a Sunday night. But we have it all now, and it's interesting. I mentioned, hey, Pittsburgh's probably going to be the favorite to be the division winner. They're like minus 220 at DraftKings. Baltimore's plus 160. I think that's a decent number, but remember, they're 2 games out. They don't have the tiebreaker because they lost head-to-head with Pittsburgh, which they can even out if they beat them in Baltimore. If Baltimore beats Pittsburgh in their second meeting later in the season. But remember, Baltimore already lost to Cleveland. So that's the second tiebreaker's division record. Now, you could say Pittsburgh hasn't played Cincy yet, and they'll probably lose one of those 2 games, while Baltimore has already banked those 2 wins. So it's interesting. Plus 160 for Baltimore. With how tough the Steelers' schedule is, I get it. Now, the Ravens' schedule, I think it comes down to, do you think the Ravens are going to beat the Chargers and the Eagles? Because if you don't, maybe you just wait and you get a better price. But reading off these schedules, Steelers play the Browns 2 out of the next 3. So they're at Cleveland Thursday night. They're 3.5 point favorite in Cleveland. So at Cleveland, at Cincy, home for the Browns again. Then it gets really tough. At the Eagles, at the Ravens, home for the Chiefs on Christmas, the Bengals again. I mean, they could really, even if they play well, and again, I've underrated them, I've underestimated them. I understand all that. This is the teeth of the schedule. This is the hard part. They could easily lose 3 out of the last 4 games. Now, maybe you get a dead Bengals team and maybe you steal one of these other games. I understand all that, but look, it's possible now too that Baltimore loses one of these games. So you do have a bit of a cushion if you're Pittsburgh, and you're not getting a huge number with Baltimore, but I can understand getting behind Baltimore at plus 160. And the other one that jumps out and talk about this coming up, Tampa at plus 400. Atlanta hasn't played well. Atlanta plays as a bye. Then they play the Chargers. Then they play Minnesota. So that one's interesting. And I mentioned San Fran would probably be an underdog to make the playoffs at this point. On Sunday, we didn't have a number. They are plus 200 at DraftKings to make the playoffs. And I don't know that I want any part of that. I think if you're going to play them, you just, with the wild cards possibly spoken for, with the Minnesotas and the Washingtons and Green Bay. Now they can beat Green Bay this week and gain a game, basically gain a game and a half with the tiebreaker. Maybe you just take a shot, San Francisco plus 350 at DraftKings to win the division. Maybe that's the way to play it. But if you're interested in parlaying some of these, which these books let you parlay them, I mean, you could throw a few of these together, and you get a 50-1 payout if you just have a free bet where they cap you at 10, 15, $20, and you want to go for the jumbo payout and just have something fun to root for. That would not be a bad way to approach it. I don't have a feel for Steelers Browns on Thursday night. I'd be inclined to take the home dog just because I do think, look, it's a low total, 36, so getting over a field goal is valuable. Tomlin's, as good as he is as an underdog, he's shaky as a favorite, a road favorite. They tend to play down to their competition. You figure Cleveland will get up for this. They're home. It's prime time. It's a rivalry game. And Pittsburgh doesn't blow anybody out. So, I mean, this could easily be, a 14-13, 16-14, ugly AFC North type of game. We're at the time of the year where maybe weather is a factor. It doesn't look like it's going to be too bad at the moment, but it's just, I would lean towards taking the Browns. But I've been wrong on the Steelers so much that I'm not dying to bet. I actually look towards an under. I know it's low. And once you get past 36.5, you can get a 37 minus 118 or so. Maybe that's the way to play it. I just, barring a rash of defensive production that leads to the total, defensive scores or turnovers that lead to scores, I just think this is a ball control game, a field position game. Pittsburgh probably goes into here saying, hey, as long as we don't turn it over, as long as we don't screw it up, we can win. Wilson didn't play well last week. He had a bad turnover in the red zone, so maybe they play it conservative. I could see a 13-10, 18-16, just one of these weird low-scoring games. I would lean towards taking the points. I would lean towards an under too, and that might not be a bad parlay too. I think that's a correlated parlay. Or if you like Cleveland, you probably like the under and just them to keep it close and keep it low scoring. But either way, I do think this is a close, low scoring game. So I'll call it a play on the under. I'm tempted to take Cleveland too, but they're just a bad team. And if you look at Cleveland's schedule, man, I know these I think Fanatics has plus 325, and they always have seems like the worst number in the market. DraftKings has plus 350. Odds to have the worst record. They are the short shot Cleveland because their schedule is really, really tough. And they are a mess. They're not as good defensively. Winston, I think we can all stop with this idea that he needs to be a starter in the league. He's a backup. I mean, he's okay. He's a good backup, but he's a backup. He should not be anyone's starter. So decent Thursday night game. It's still a watchable game. I mean, the games Thursday nights have not been bad. With Eagles Washington was good, or at least relevant and competitive into the fourth quarter. The one the week before was Cincy Baltimore. That was a classic. That was a lot of fun. And boy, Cincy. Probably not going to make the playoffs here. They're at the point where they have to run the table. They play a lot of fun games. My goodness. That Thursday night game was awesome. The Sunday night game was great. I mean, it's maybe the two best games of the year. Just exciting, back and forth. They're never out of it. They can never pull away. They can't get any stops, but you can't stop them. I wish just for the sake of entertainment, they would make the playoffs, but they have their work cut out for them. And they are going to look back if they do miss the playoffs, which they probably will, and just kick themselves, losing at home to the Patriots, blowing all these leads to Baltimore, where they had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter in the first game. Then they were up 14 in the second game. The other night they rallied, but they had their chances, and McPherson just killed them, and they dropped a pick. They've given away a lot of these games. But if they could ever get in, which again I don't think they will, the playoffs would be much better, much more fun with them in it. I think they've dug themselves too deep a hole. They are plus 350 to make it. Not terrible. It's not terrible. I mean, if you look at their schedule, and I'll bring it up here in a minute, they're capable of beating anyone. It's just they're capable of losing to anyone too. Like they can play up, they play up to their competition. They seemingly play down to their competition, and I just don't trust them to string together week after week, win after win. As I'm looking at the schedule, they get a bye, and they are home for the Steelers, at the Cowboys, at the Titans, home for the Browns, a big one against the Broncos because that could swing a tiebreaker. Then they're at the Steelers the final week. That's the path is there. You know what? The more I'm looking at it, the more I'm thinking about it. I don't mind a plus 350 to make the playoffs. I really don't. Now, maybe you're better off playing them game by game, and they either have to win out or maybe they can afford one more loss as long as it's not to Denver. No matter what, they have to beat Denver, you would think, to get in. I think at plus 350, that's not a bad bet. So some interesting numbers here with these division odds to make the playoffs. As we hit the stretch, it's weird to think that these teams with a bye, like you look at the Falcons schedule, you look at the Bengals schedule. If you have a bye this week, your next game is not till December. That's how fast the season goes. It really does. I know I say it all the time, but season just flies by. We've got 2 weeks left to the college regular season, man. Feels like we were just sitting here in the summer previewing all this stuff, and you look up and it's Thanksgiving, and we only got a few weeks left. So we'll talk to Iain MacMillan coming up. Baseball, the awards went out Monday to the Rookie of the Year. Skeens got it as I expected. I expected actually a closer vote. It was pretty close, but not nip and tuck. And that was very odd how they had Ripken presenting it. And that leaked a couple hours before. Ripken tweets out, "Hey, I'm presenting Rookie of the Year for AL and NL." And we're all reading into it, rightfully so. Hey, the Orioles guy is in the mix, Kowser, for AL Rookie of the Year. That means he's going to get it. Jason Weingarten texted me. He goes, "Well, Jackson Merrill's from Baltimore, so Ripken's probably going to give it to Kowser. He's probably going to give it to Merrill." And nope, they give it to Luis Gil of the Yankees, who was about 26 years old and made his debut in 2021. So it's a strange Rookie of the Year selection in that sense. It's just unusual how old he is and how experienced he is. But he wins. It was a watered down Rookie of the Year field with Wells and Kowser. It wasn't a great candidate, and Gil was 12-1, middle of September. I remember looking at that, thinking about it, and not betting it. But Gil wins, and Skeens wins. Pretty much all for the drama. I'm recording this Tuesday. I think these Tuesday night awards are like manager of the year. And eventually we get, I think Cy Young is Wednesday and then MVP finally is Thursday. And there's no MVP. There's no drama with the MVP. So you're going to drag it out all this way just to, and I've talked about this, but you're going to drag it out all this way just to give it to Judge and Ohtani, and, very anticlimactic. But Cy Young, it's going to be Skubal in the American League. And I would think it's going to be Sale in the National League. He was a monster favorite, but who knows? Maybe Wheeler can steal it. Skeens is also a finalist there, but Skeens is not going to win it. Even though he was 200-1 in like the summer. And if you made that bet 100-1, 200-1, that's a great bet. That's not going to get home, I don't think. So that's the football. That is the baseball coming up. Iain MacMillan of Sports Illustrated joins us. That is next. This is the Shoulda Bet More podcast. All right, we are back. Shoulda Bet More podcast, and he is back. He's our buddy. You can catch him, the Bacon Bets podcast, Sports Illustrated, SI Betting. It is Iain MacMillan. Iain, what's going on, man? How's your season going? How's everything?
Things are going decent, I guess. As a Falcons fan, it's been a rough couple of weeks. But hey, I guess I can't complain. We're still leading the NFC South. So, I guess to answer your question, things are going okay.
Yeah, and I think you were on the day after they beat the Eagles in week 2, and it just always amazes me how quickly the season goes by. Because you think week 2, man, the season just flies by.
Yeah.
You were flying high. You felt good. Do you still think they are in good shape here to win this division, or not necessarily?
And from a betting standpoint, I think everyone should be betting on the Buccaneers because the situation they're in is heading in. They have a bye week this week, and then heading into their last 6 games, that they might have to go 4-2 to win the division because the Buccaneers schedule extremely easy to close out. Going to be favored in 6 of their last 7 games. Their only tough game is against the Chargers. I actually think by opponent win percentage, I think they have the second easiest schedule left in the NFL. So the Falcons might have to go 4-2, and when you look at the games they have, they're going to struggle to go 4-2. That means they need to beat the teams they're supposed to beat, the Panthers, Raiders, and Giants, and then they need to steal one from the Chargers, Commanders, or Vikings, with the Commanders and Vikings both being road games. That might not happen. Are they favored? Yes. Should they be favored? Yes. Do they still have a good chance of winning the division? Yes. Would I be surprised if the Falcons implode as they always do and the Buccaneers come back up and steal the division? No, absolutely not. I think it's like 4-1 right now for the Bucs to win the division. I think that's a great bet. I'm very worried. That game against the Saints that we lost, obviously it was the Broncos this past week, the week before. We might look back at that as the one that got away, that cost us our season.
Yeah, and I'm shopping around now because I think people are onto this. I'm seeing plus 275 for Tampa at DraftKings. And I remember looking at the same thing, like, man, the Tampa schedule is super easy. And if Atlanta gets on the slide here, you can still get 4-1 at FanDuel. You can still get 4-1 at FanDuel. So that is a bet I would support. Let's go back to Sunday. I was talking about this in the open. I think the Chargers and the Steelers are in the same sort of category where they were both in kind of the back seat of the conversation, where we put the Ravens, the Chiefs, and even the Bills. They're sitting in the front seat, and we all kind of assumed Chargers, Steelers, playoff teams, but nothing more. Are you at the point where you could actually see the Chargers and the Steelers going to a Super Bowl, playing in an AFC title game?
No, I think what last week showed me is I think I could picture both of them winning a playoff game, because I think before last week I looked at them as obviously as playoff teams, but as like first round exits. Now I could see them both winning a playoff game, maybe 2. And obviously depends how the rest of the playoffs shake out. But if they have to, like, let's say the Steelers have to play, I mean, who knows if they win the division, maybe Ravens first round, like Chiefs second round, and then maybe Bills third round. Like, they're not beating all 3 of those teams in a row. They could beat 1, maybe 2. It'd be too big of an ask for them to beat all those 3 teams in a row. Now, obviously, if some upsets happen, the other side of the bracket, they might get some easier matchups. But no, I think we do have to take the Steelers seriously. We do have to take the Chargers seriously. The Chargers, I think they have an issue when it comes to offensive weapons. I think they have, Ladd McConkey's pretty good, but to beat these elite teams, especially in playoff scenarios, teams who now have a lot more experience in the playoffs, I don't think you can rely on your best weapons being Ladd McConkey and Will Dissly. So no, they have impressed me both this past week. Both very good defensive teams. They're teams that I think now can win a playoff game, maybe 2. But I'd be shocked if either of them. I'd be shocked if anyone, especially in the AFC, if it's not the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, maybe. But the Ravens got a lot of issues too. I think it's still the Chiefs or Bills in the AFC. As boring of an answer as that is, I can't picture the Steelers or the Chargers representing the AFC.
I generally agree with most of that. I would give a little more of a chance for the Chargers, probably not to get to a Super Bowl, but like if they were playing in an AFC title game, they got a defense, they've got a coach, they've got a quarterback, good offensive line, and that's actually a team the next few years. I mean, weapons are the one thing you can find in the draft pretty easy. Running backs,
Sure.
receivers, man. The next couple of years, I think Harbaugh could be following the same path he did at Michigan, where he couldn't quite catch Ohio State, and then he got a little closer, then he finally caught him. I think the Chargers might be a sleeping giant. You mentioned the Ravens. Do you think there's value on them plus 160 to win the division, considering the Steelers have a gauntlet of a schedule? Now, Baltimore is 2.5 games back because of the tiebreaker, but Baltimore can get that tiebreaker back because they did sweep Cincy, and if they beat Pittsburgh in Baltimore later in the year, and then Pittsburgh, loses one of these games to the Bengals, then that division record comes into play. Is plus 160 enough for you to take Baltimore?
It's not. I would need some longer odds on that. I have some big time issues with the Ravens. Now it's tough to completely discount them because obviously they have arguably the best offense in the NFL, Lamar Jackson, an MVP candidate. But not only are they bad defensively, my actual biggest issue with the Ravens has been penalties. Leading the NFL right now by a wide margin of both total penalties and penalty yards. I think they have 10 more penalties than the next worst team, which is crazy. And when you play good teams, that margin for error is so small. You cost yourself with a couple extra penalties that could end up being the difference maker. And listen, the Ravens, they got some tough games too. I mean, the Eagles are a tough game. Obviously, the Steelers again, Chargers this coming Monday, Texans. I think they are a better team than Texans, but the Texans certainly will be live dogs in that game. So no, I'm actually surprised the odds for that aren't a little bit longer. I don't like that. What'd you say it was plus 160 for them
Plus
to win the division?
160, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that. I'd need north of 2-1 for me to explore that.
Yeah, I mean, they are chasing 2 games. I think they're telling you, hey, they're not maybe trying to suppress the Baltimore money, but they know Baltimore's like on a neutral field, probably better than Pittsburgh, but better. It's starting to not matter because we're at the point of the season where wins have been banked, losses have been banked. And you know what? There's only so much time. So yeah, I mean, it would take Baltimore. I think a lot of that too is the Pittsburgh schedule. Because Pittsburgh, I mean, Cincy twice. I know these Cleveland games, maybe they win both of them, but Steelers have the Chiefs still, the Ravens.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is the Steelers schedule. But look, we thought all year the Steelers schedule would be hard, and here they are, with 2 losses as we head to Thanksgiving. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. I could see it. It's just the odds. I mean, plus 160. I just think I'd need some longer odds on that to explore it.
What do you do if you're Baltimore? What do you do with Tucker?
I think you give him a couple more weeks and ride it out. But I mean, if we're getting to like week 15 and he's still missing kicks on a weekly basis, I think you kind of have to go a different direction, don't you? I mean, he's a legend. He's arguably the greatest NFL kicker of all time. But all that matters is the now. And if you're missing kicks, I mean, if they ride with Justin Tucker in the playoffs and he hasn't fixed the issue, and they're down 1 point with 5 seconds left on the clock, and they need to kick a field goal, a 48-yarder to beat the Chiefs, I wouldn't be feeling very confident Justin Tucker right now, which is a crazy thing to say. But I mean, if they want to win the Super Bowl, they got to put together the best team they can right now, and that might not be Justin Tucker. But great kickers are kind of tough to come by too, and I think he's done enough in his career that you do give him a few more weeks for sure. But if I was Justin Tucker, I'd be starting to get nervous about my job.
Yeah, and cutting him would seem like harsh, just how great he's been, but it's almost like a closer in baseball. Kicking such a unique position, just like a closer, where you can't just work through your issues, because if you're in a slump, you're blowing the games. It's such a high pressure, important job. It's just such a unique situation. I mean, you start to see last year, all right, maybe he's not the best anymore. He missed a few kicks. He's no longer automatic. Now to the point where it's like, man, he's not even good anymore. He's like one of the worst kickers, which is just, I don't know if it's age. I don't know if it's just a slump, a mental thing, mechanics. I don't know what to make of it. It is odd.
It is weird that this happens to kickers because it's not like his leg strength has diminished. So like why does accuracy when it comes to kicking go down as you get older? It is kind of a weird thing. Because it'd be different if he was old and like he could only kick 45-yarders, but I mean, like, he still seems to have the leg strength. He's just missing it. So I don't know if it's mental. I don't know if for some reason accuracy goes down when you're older. It does seem weird. I remember Morton Anderson his last season was still kicking for the Falcons. We had to bring him in, and he was like, he wasn't literally 50 years old, but I think he was like mid 40s. So, I mean, there have been some older kickers that have had some success, and it's usually strength that goes first, but he still seems to have, the leg power. It's just he's missing kicks. So it might be mental more than anything, which is why if I was the Ravens, I'd give him a few more weeks.
Yeah, and he's not young anymore, but he's also like he's 34. It's not like you mentioned it. These kickers
he's only 34?
Yeah,
I would have guessed he was older than that.
Yeah,
that's surprising. Yeah.
It's not like he's ancient, where like you said, these kickers can kick into their 40s. That's one position that doesn't you actually age pretty well. If you can kick, into your late 30s. Anything on the Thursday night game? Steelers laying 3.5 to the Browns.
Yeah, I'm laying the points at the Steelers. Listen, I have gone through the past 4 or 5 years of continuously betting against the Steelers every single week because I sit down, I look at the metrics, net yards per play, they're bottom half the NFL, offensive EPA, even though they're a little bit better since they got, Russell Wilson, like close to bottom 10 in the NFL. But the Steelers, and I've come to accept it finally, last week was the first week where I was like, listen, I think I just need to throw the analytics, the advanced metrics out the window when it comes to the Steelers. Mike Tomlin might be the greatest football coach of all time. They just find ways to win games and to cover spreads. So I'm just going to do that once again. Because if I look at the numbers, Steelers, once again, not as good as their actual record shows, but it doesn't matter. So I give up. If you can't beat them, join them. I'll continue to bet on the Steelers. And I actually do think, I don't think the market is as low on the Browns as I am. I think the Browns might be the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah, I was looking at one of the books. They were the short shot to have the fewest wins, which they got a lot of company because you get the Giants and the Panther. Boy, there's some bad teams. Why is that? That's been a theme here the past couple of weeks. Why do you think there's so many bad teams?
Like just in general across the NFL, why there's so many bad teams? I think I think there's a lot of factors to it. I think there is a huge discrepancy between good coaches and bad coaches in the NFL. I think there's a lot of bad coaching. I think it's a lot of coaching. And now that's not necessarily the case for the Browns because I think Kevin Stefanski I think for the Browns, Deshaun Watson kind of ruined their entire season and they've kind of imploded from within. But generally, I think in the NFL, I think there's a huge difference between the best coaches in the league and the worst coaches. I think Matt Eberflus for the Browns is a perfect example of an older guy who just is stuck in his ways, doesn't fix things, doesn't change his schemes. They make small mistakes every single week. And then there are some other teams that don't make those small mistakes. There are other teams who evolve their schemes on not only a yearly basis, but a weekly basis. I think this is the first time in the NFL that we are seeing a massive difference between the best coaches and the worst coaches. And I think that is leading to a very polarized standings where you have a group of really good teams and then a group of absolute trash teams in the bottom of the league.
Anything else you like this week? There are some ugly home dogs. It's actually not the prettiest slate, but man, Tampa laying 5 at the Giants, Kansas City laying 11 at the Panthers. You just go down the line. If you have an appetite to bet the big dogs plus the points, this is the week where there's some ugly ones. And anything jump out to you right away?
Yeah, if you want to talk about some big dogs, an ugly bet that I actually do love, I like the Cowboys getting. I got it at 10.5 last night. It's still at 10.5 right now against the Commanders.
10.5. Enjoy. Have fun with that.
There is something though that has shown, and I think we have enough sample size now that we can use it. Cliff Kingsbury's teams have fallen off as seasons have gone on. Now he's not the head coach, but he is the offensive coordinator for the Commanders. And now we've seen the Commanders offense take a step back here a few weeks in a row. And it was the case at Texas Tech. It was the case when he was with the Cardinals. I don't have the tweet up in front of me, but I saw like the record of his teams in the first half of the season, the second half of the season for like a 9-year sample size is significantly different. Now I'm not going to say the Cowboys are going to win this game, but I don't want to lay 10.5 points on the Cliff Kingsbury offense that has shown regression every single year that he's been a coach. And it's already starting to kind of peek its head a little bit this season. So, and also to Cooper Rush's credit, he threw for 354 yards on Monday night against a pretty solid Texans secondary. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't a winning effort. I mean, he did throw the ball 55 times. If you throw that ball, the ball that many times, you're going to rack up yards. But I actually thought Cooper Rush didn't look terrible on Monday night, like I said, against a pretty solid secondary in Houston. So yeah, if you want to talk ugly bets, that's got to be my favorite ugly bet of the week. I'm going to take 10.5 with Dallas.
Do you think San Francisco is finished, not making the playoffs?
No. And I like San Francisco to beat the Packers this week. I can't quit the San Francisco 49ers because you look at their metrics, they're very good in most areas. They're like second in the NFL in net yards per play behind only the Ravens. But yet they just completely, I've never seen a team other than my Falcons lose so many games in the last 2 minutes. It's crazy. It feels like every single game they're beating them the entire game. They got the game in check. It looks like they're going to cruise to a victory, and then you blink and they lost. So no, at the end of the day, I mean, maybe that is something worth mentioning. Maybe you put that into your handicapping process. But at the end of the day, they are still a good team. They're moving the ball down the field. They're largely preventing the other team from doing so. They just can't, crap all over themselves in the final 2 minutes and they'll win these games. So especially with still how wide open the NFC West is, they certainly need to start winning some games. Their season isn't over. I still believe in them. But if you're a 49ers fan, your hand has to be kind of hovering over the panic button right now.
2-1 to make the playoffs. Is that enough for you?
For the 49ers to make the playoffs 2-1?
brutal schedule. Bills,
It is a
Lions.
tough schedule.
It's a really tough schedule.
I would entertain that. I mean, I'm not going to bet it myself. Yeah. The issue in the NFC is like the wild card spots are kind of already locked up, right?
Yes.
So it's kind of like win the NFC or bust. So do you have their NFC West odds? I think I'd rather just bet them to win the division.
Yep, it's a good point. In the problem with their division is they've lost a lot of these games head to head. So man, they're gonna almost have to win it outright because the tiebreaker situation for them is not going to be friendly. Plus 350 to win the West. Maybe that's the way to play it.
I think that's probably the way. I mean, most likely. I mean, the Vikings are going to have a wild card spot. I mean, they could even catch a Lions. Technically, they're only one game back. Packers are probably going to have a wild card spot. Commanders, I mean, maybe the Commanders implode, which we just talked about Cliff Kingsbury. But then you have the other NFC West teams, like that could lock up a wild card spot. Even the Buccaneers are kind of still in the mix. So I think I would rather take the longer odds on them to just win the NFC West outright.
Anything awards wise, you think is worth a bet right now? MVP, Coach of the Year, take it whatever direction.
I haven't even looked at Coach of the Year odds. One that stuck out to me yesterday, I didn't bet it myself. I thought about it, and it's kind of a popular one, but is Bo Nix live for Offensive Rookie of the Year?
Down to 3-1. He's down to 3-1.
Listen, as we've seen in these awards markets, I mean, the most important part of the season is the end of the season, the last 5 weeks. It's been the case for MVP. They don't value results in the early part of the season as much as they do late in the season. And not to bring it up again, but Cliff Kingsbury's offenses have struggled in the second half of the season. Jaden Daniels has already regressed a little bit from how good he looked at the start of the season. Bo Nix has been improving. He's been trending in the right direction. Obviously, I don't think he's going to throw for 1 million yards and 1 million touchdowns like he did against my Falcons last week. But still, I think based on not only Bo Nix looking better and better, but also Cliff Kingsbury's offenses historically have collapsed in the second half of the season. I think there might be a little bit of value there on Bo Nix to steal this from Jaden Daniels.
All right, man. Anything else for the week that you played? Any college basketball? Have you started with college basketball yet?
I have not started with college basketball.
Yeah, me neither. I'm way behind. Usually Thanksgiving week, the Maui tournament, which is great. And I think UConn's in it this year. I think usually it's a really star-studded field. So that's the week I usually get into it. But man, with the transfer portal, NIL, these teams changing conferences, just feel like it's so much work. And it starts right in the middle of NFL. It's just so hard to catch up.
It is. I will say that first college basketball game I watched was my UC Irvine Anteaters beat Pepperdine the other night. So that was a big win. They're undefeated. Other than that, I have not bet on college basketball. I have not dove into it too much. I will leave the folks. I want to just quickly give them my best bet for week 12 if I can.
Sure.
And this might be my best bet of the entire season so far.
Oh,
I love the under on Sunday Night Football between the Eagles and Rams. Under
okay.
50. These two defenses have been like everyone. When you think of the Eagles and the Rams, you're thinking good offenses. You're thinking Puka Nacua, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley. A big part for both these teams' success recently has actually been their defenses. Dating back to week 6, first and third in the NFL in opponent EPA. No one can throw the ball against the Eagles, which is huge for the Rams. The Rams defense themselves have been able to create a ton of pressure. A great pass rush. Yeah, I'm shocked that this total is all the way up at 50. And also the Rams big time red zone issues lately too. That's what lost them the game against the Dolphins a couple weeks ago. So I was shocked when I saw the total for this game at 50. Best bet of the week, might be my best bet of the season. Love the under in the Eagles Rams Sunday night.
And you sold it. There's some conviction there. Last one. Are the Lions winning the Super Bowl?
Oh, I want to say yes, man. I want to say yes.
They are
the
year, right?
They're the most complete team in the NFL right now. And it's not even close. Their offense is top 5. Their defense is top 5. They got great coaching, great special teams. I will say their injury last week, Alex Anzalone, the linebacker, I think that's a little bit of a bigger deal than people are making it out to be. He's a great piece on that defense. So now they have their best linebacker down and obviously missing Aiden Hutchinson. Now they've still played very well defensively without Hutchinson, but now potentially, or they have lost their best linebacker. That's going to hurt them, I think, a little bit more than people think, but still at the end of the day, I mean, every team has to deal with injuries. The Lions have no real holes, great coaching, great offense, and not just a great offense. They can beat you anywhere. They can beat you on the ground. They can beat you with speed. They can beat you through the air. I think my main concern would be Jared Goff. When he's having a bad game, he has a bad game. His floor is bad. If he can avoid having a bad game for 3 games in the playoffs. And if I were to just say even odds aside, and and the betting odds do indicate this as well, a Super Bowl pick, I think it's got to be the Lions. Just most complete team in the NFL from top to bottom.
Yeah, in golf, it's a good point. I mean, he's probably gonna get the 1 seed, and you're gonna be able to keep him indoors, which helps him. But when it goes off the rails, it's a little like Purdy-ish last year against the Ravens, and there was a game in the playoffs where it's just, man, it can go sideways quickly. But should be a lot of fun, man. Appreciate the time. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, Twitter or X at Iain MacBets, IAIN MacBets. You can find my written work at si.com/betting and check out the Bacon Bets podcast, where I break down my best bet for all 272 NFL regular season games.
Appreciate the time, man. Hopefully do it again soon.
Thanks a lot, Will. I appreciate it.
That will do it. Iain MacMillan, appreciate him coming on. Thanks to him. Rate, review, subscribe. We will be back Friday to break it all down. NFL, college, big weekend ahead for both. Talk to you then.